This is my 1956 Ford Fairlane. Today, I'm going to show you the car I love, but I'm afraid to drive. I love this thing though, especially for that reason.
In 1956, this was Ford's flagship model. They did a lot of interesting packages and styling cues. Specifically, when this car was purchased, it had the Thunderbird engine shoehorned into it. Really, all that means is they took an engine for another car that was designed for, shoehorned it into a family sedan, and then realized that you couldn't change the oil filter without jacking up the left side of the engine. Yep, that's honestly true. We have since cleaned up the engine by adding an aluminum intake and getting rid of the old teapot carb. So that has made it much more drivable with a modern carburetor as well as a modern intake as well. That was mainly just so we could get rid of the old teapot carburetor mounting. We've also gone through and removed the generator and added an alternator. So that has cleaned things up there in the engine bay as well. The engine noise is actually quite nice. It's got a very unique tone to it. This is what Ford considered as their Y block. The reason why it was referred to as a Y block is because the engine block itself actually comes down and extends to the bottom of the crankshaft. On a modern V8, a lot of times the oil pan covers much of the crankshaft. In this engine, it's actually the block that covers the crankshaft. So because of that, it has much more of, instead of a V shape, it has a Y shape because that block extends down past the crankshaft. The engine sounds great. It's a true dual exhaust. The only thing we've really done to it to help the sound is put on a single chamber Flowmasters, as well as kept the true dual exhaust. There's no H-pipe, X-pipe, or anything like that, so it does give it a very unique sound. And we did go with, there was a guy out of California that reds headers, and so we went ahead and we put in those headers. Other than that, the car is really stock. Originally, the car did not come with seatbelts. I've gone in and I've started adding seatbelts. As of the time I took this video, I only had the driver's seatbelt in, but I have since then gotten the passenger seatbelt ready, and I just got to bolt that in now. It's all drilled, tapped, and ready to go. The seats are amazingly comfortable. They feel like they take 90% of the suspension work and put it in the couch of a seat that you have in front of you. So as you're going down the road and you hit a bump, the seat takes much of the suspension bump as it can. It's really quite a weird feeling because as you're holding the steering wheel, you feel like your arms move up and down to hold to a steering wheel that's in a fixed location. So it's just kind of fun and unique in that regard. At the very back of the car, you pull down the license plate to reveal the gas fill-up spot. Now, modern cars have them on the side, and that's for good reason, because otherwise you're not stuck pulling forward outside of the normal area to fill up with your car. And so you don't have to stretch the hose this far or pull up way out there in front of everyone. It makes for some fun moments, but it's definitely unique to fill it up. And then you're left with the spot of, where the heck do I put the gas cap? Always fun. The brakes are still the stock brakes. So we really haven't touched much. We just cleaned them up. We left them as the drum brakes. This is something that sometimes is a little bit scary because well, drum brakes are not exactly known for their abilities of taking heat. So they work very well, and they're great for non-power assist, but oh man, they're kind of hard to work with. I'm going to kind of borrow a Doug DeMero tip here. I want to show you guys what it's like to get into the rear seat of this vehicle. One of the things you'll notice is the seats actually fold forward at an angle to give you more space since this is a two-door. As I plop back there, our bench is all the way back. So right now I'm giving the driver the most room that they can, and the passengers in the back still have plenty of leg room. I am about 6'2", and I still have about 3 inches between my knee and the seat in front of me.
One of the things that gets people a little bit confused is the shifter. My shifter is a sideways H pattern. I'll get to overdrive in a second. But in short, if you imagine the H kind of from this direction toward me, up is reverse, down is first. Away from me, up is second, down is third. For freeway and highway cruising, they gave you this overdrive. Now, pulled out was disengaged, pushed in is engaged. The odd thing about this, though, is that overdrive would engage even on first gear. So if I revved up the engine to about 20 miles per hour, overdrive was engaged. If I let go of the gas, it would let go of the RPM and allow it to hit overdrive and behave almost like it was in second gear without me ever pushing in the clutch or shifting. Really strange, but essentially it does this to every gear. It goes about 65 miles per hour at about 2,000 RPM. So it really does fairly well considering everything in the age and all that of the engine. Because there is overdrive, you'll see there underneath the gas pedal, there is a small little cylinder. That is actually an overdrive kickdown switch. So the idea behind it, if I were to ever floor it and overdrive was on, it would cut power to the distributor, allow the engine to downshift into the lower gear. So that's essentially how it works to allow you to disengage overdrive while you're stuck, essentially in overdrive in a gear. One interesting thing is the turn signal stalk. In modern cars, you're used to pulling this backwards to only allow your brights to go on. I can turn it this way, turn it that way. I can't push it away. I can't pull it back. Nothing like that. Reason why is if you look down there, a little floor switch, that is my brights. So brights on, brights off. It's all done through the left foot. Even more bizarre was the windshield wiper bag. So I've got the ability to use my left foot for the brights, but above that you'll see this weird little kind of pedal. That was my pump to be able to spray the front windshield with the sprayers. The other thing we've done is we've upgraded the ignition system. So spark plug wires, everything like that. It's really quite amusing because originally they were the copper spark plug wires. We would start up the engine, and I kid you not, everyone's radio and TV would get staticky around us. So this was back when TV airwaves were a little bit different. It wasn't the digital signal like you're used to now. But every time we fired this thing up, neighbors would complain for more than one reason. One of the things that was really annoying was the fact that there was no reverse lights. Anytime I tried to back out of a parking spot, everyone kind of cut me off because they didn't realize I was backing up. However, we got a kit to retrofit that and add in a reverse lights in what was used to be a decorative section right there. So now it does have reverse lights. The exhaust is factory through the rear bumper for those that had the 292 engine or otherwise the Thunderbird package. So that is something that is just a neat little touch that they've added, and it sounds absolutely amazing. So because this car is from the 50s, ashtrays are very prominent. I've got mine up here at the front, and my passengers are well taken care of, each with their own little ashtray back there. Amusing thing, though, is the windshield wipers. So I'll go ahead and turn on the accessories. We've gone ahead and updated these, but they used to be driven off of engine vacuum. So the faster the RPM, the faster they would go, essentially. But here they are. You can see how they operate in that manner. The main cooling for these cars actually came from these side windows. So keep in mind that these cars did not have AC from the factory. So you push these in, turn that knob down, and then twist the glass all the way around. And you'd be amazed at how much air that can actually force at you. It's really quite effective. Outside of that as well, they did put in vents inside of the car. More specifically, you can see here by the key, which notice the key is on the left side of the steering column. That does mess with people. But here's my left air vent. And as soon as I open that up, there's a tube essentially in there that's opened and allows air from the very front of the car to the sides of the radiator to come in. I'm going to go ahead and fire it up for you. This is actually by far a very simple car to start. You put your key in, you just turn it on, and you barely bump the starter. See here, fuel pump is all priming, and she's up and rolling. So, funny story about the tachometer. I added the tachometer about 18 years ago. Oh man, I'm starting to feel old. One of the things to keep in mind, notice how it's bouncing around like that. This tachometer doesn't have any issues once you get above idle. it'll smooth out and it just reads pretty rock solid. Problem is around idle, it goes a little funny. The story behind this, though, is I started up the car one time with the battery terminals reversed. So the car ran as a grounded positive in the system. Now, the car back then had an alternator, a generator and not an alternator, so it could do this. The generator flipped polarities and the car ran just fine. And unfortunately, I drove it around that way for a week, just thinking the tachometer didn't work because it was pegged at 0. Finally, I realized, hey, I've wired up the tachometer right. Why is this not running? And with a multimeter, I started testing points and I realized, hey, it's flipped. I thought I flipped the wires on the multimeter. Nope, I flipped the terminals on the battery. Once I took care of that, it fired back up, but it's always had this weird at idle kind of bounce from then on. So believe it or not, this is actually my great-grandma's car. She was the original owner of this thing. So if you can just imagine a petite old lady driving around with no power steering, no power brakes, in this big old heavy car. Yeah, that was my great-grandma. Anyway, she ended up giving the car to my mom, or to my grandpa, and then my grandpa gave it to my mom to drive through high school. So when my parents actually met and started dating, my mom was driving this car. It was mainly used and abused in farms as a kind of a worker truck, but car version of it, and done so up in Idaho. Well, one interesting thing about this car is essentially it kind of broke down and they decided that they didn't really want to put the time into fixing it, so they parked it for about 25 years. Well, come 25 years later, I decide to go pick it up. My mom and I loaded onto the trailer, and my mom, dad, and I all ended up driving it back down to Texas, where it went through about a year restoration. I drove it about 6 months after we picked it up, so you can just imagine how quickly we put time into this, and to allow me to be able to start driving it. Now, as you can see as I'm driving, it's just unique. I mean, right now I'm in second gear. It's a sideways H pattern. The clutch is a very manual clutch. It's not a hydraulic clutch like a lot of people are used to. But if I'm at 3,000 RPMs or 2,000 RPMs and I hit the gas, it does the same thing. It pulls about the same rate. It just doesn't care. It's going to accelerate like it wants to accelerate. The car is very torquey. It holds up with traffic very well. The problem is that it doesn't stop with traffic very well at all. So downshifting is an absolute must as I'm driving this thing around. I've got a red light coming on, so I'll spend a good amount of time just downshifting to make sure that I'm not wearing out the brakes or doing anything that's going to cause me to get a little crazy. I'm going to roll up the window so I can actually talk. I'll turn on the vents. But, I mean, you can hear it's actually relatively a quiet car. It's nice, it's refined, it's relaxing. It can be very smooth as I'm shifting in between gears. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little gas. Got a green light and a highway speed here. We'll give her some runs. The other part that drives me nuts, people that like to jump in front of you for no reason. Okay, that guy's letting me in so I can slide over now. But you can hear the sound of the car. You can just see the amazing view, and everything about it is just, it's fun. But man, anytime that I'm riding in this car or driving it, I can just feel my adrenaline pumping. Mostly it's nervous from everyone else around me because they scare the crap out of me when I'm in this car. So this is going to be fun. I'm going to hold the GoPro in my mouth, so I'm not going to be talking too much. But this is the view. This is when you get in the car and essentially you hear Clint Eastwood quote saying, "Do you feel lucky today?" You got this huge steering wheel with this metal chrome ring pointing back at you. All right. Just crazy in that regard. All right, I gotta do one thing. I hope this camera can do it justice. Check out the body roll. It is absolutely hilarious. Notice how much I did not really move the steering wheel, but the dice were moving. Yeah. About to go through one of the most crazy roads that I have to take to get home. And my city doesn't do exactly, they do a horrible job at upkeeping the road. Let's be blunt. And so this one is the best one of the ones I have to take, but it's going to demonstrate how much suspension is actually the couch on the front seat. And this is why I have a seatbelt, because it is just absolutely the only thing that freaking saves the car as you're riding in it, because it's seriously, the suspension is the seat. It's crazy. All right, so here we go. Here's the seat, the spot that usually kind of checks it out and shows you. All right, so thanks for hanging in there, taking a ride with me in my old car. Hopefully now you can see a little bit about why I love this car, but I'm absolutely terrified about driving an old classic car like this on the road to work or things like that. I just don't take it out very much. Anyway, if you like, please give it a thumbs up. I'll be doing some more fun videos with the Datsun. I've got some fun things coming up with that one that I've been working on. I just wanted to take a small break, get a few small things done on this car that allow me to move on and have some more fun with the Z. Anyway, let me know if you have any comments. Take care. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.